A few days passed, at which time Ning finished reaching the essence manifestation realm in all of his cores but two. The lightning and sound cores made the most progress of all, and the other four only entered the essence manifestation realm. As for the last two, he never got to get to them. Before he could begin doing anything for them, Emma sent him a message that she wanted to come back. Once she was out, he would have to do what he wanted some other time. Emma looked around the room and quickly turned to her father. "How many days has it been?" she asked. "It's only been a few minutes inside." 7 days, Ning said. "It's been an entire week." "Whoa," Emma couldn't help but say. "Time really does move so fascinatingly fast outside. No wonder you spent months out here and only a few hours had passed inside." She excitedly looked around. "What time is it? Lori and Lyra must have missed me," she said. Ning didn't know what time it was himself and had to ask the system. "It's afternoon it seems," he said. "You can go meet them." "Okay. I'll go take them out on a walk too," she said, and was about to walk out when Ning caught her by her hand. She paused and turned around. "What?" she asked. "Your face," Ning said. "Hide it." Emma realized what was happening. She quickly put on a fake face that still looked like her real face but didn't give off the feeling of divinity that came with her being the will. Even outside of Earth, people would still be reverent towards her, and she didn't want that. "Is that fine?" she asked once her face was changed. Ning nodded. "Come back here quickly though, I need to teach you how to make essence items from your energy," he said. Emma smiled brightly when she heard that. "You can teach me about that?" she asked. Ning nodded. "My system can help with that," he said. "Now go, and let Umbra handle any trouble that might come along. You don't have to dirty your hands for it." She smiled back. "I know." And then she left. It was a few hours before Emma was back. She walked into the room and was about to come further in when Ning stopped her. "You're dragging in mud," he said. "Huh?" She looked down. "Oh, sorry. It just started raining outside." She moved her hand so that the layer of mud around her feet disappeared. Even the footsteps that she left on the wooden floor were cleared up. She swirled her fingers once again and her clothes dried at once. Then she walked in and quickly sat in her bed, looking excitedly at her father. "Teach me," she said excitedly. "I'm ready." Ning smiled back. "It is simple really," he said as he brought out a small orange item from his storage and tossed it to her. Emma looked at the item in her hand curiously. It took a moment for her to realize what it was. "Is this a conduit?" she asked. Ning nodded. "An explosion conduit," he said. "I got a few of them while you were away. Try and see if you can copy that without wasting away all of your energy." "Oh," Emma said, somewhat dejected. "I thought you were going to teach me how to do it entirely." Ning shook his head. "I'm not like you," he said. "I cannot make this. I cannot create essence." "Oh, right," Emma said. "I do have tips though," Ning said. "I told you my system was going to help you." He had asked the system many questions and now he was ready to give her the tips. "The first thing you need to do is understand the type of energy you are dealing with," he said. "I have to understand essence," Emma said and nodded her head. She hadn't done much, but she was ready for it. "No, not essence," Ning said. "Well, yes essence, but stop thinking of it like you were learning about essence. Forget about chi, and forget about mana. For this, you cannot categorize them." Nova looked at him. "Why not?" she asked. "Because essence in this world is not the same as essence in some other world. Chi in this world would not be the same as chi on Earth, same goes for mana. Every universe has its own set of rules on how the unique energy that seeps through the cracks interact, and this prevents you from using information from one universe to another. There are similarities, yes, but the differences are there as well. It could be the different difficulties in breakthrough, the different methods of usage, the different method to acquire the energy, anything. Anything could be different, and for that very reason, you can treat each energy differently. So ignore all previous ideas about the types of energy you had and try to understand just this one. Just the essence of this universe." Emma looked like she wanted to ask a question, but she didn't. She looked down and started using her own essence to see if she could use the conduit. As she focused, Ning put up a barrier around the two of them so that they didn't accidentally explode the entire building. Once done, he looked at his daughter and smiled. He knew what she had wanted to ask. It was the same curiosity he had when the system had told him what to say. Why did the same energy manifest differently in different universes, and yet the same in from different spots in one universe? The answer apparently lay in the shape, size, and mass of the universe itself. The answer was so complex that Ning could barely understand what he was told. However, at its core, the answer was that each universe was different, and as such each one had a different possibility of what came out of each unique energy. Aside from a handful of unique energies, most other forms the invading pure energy took were unique across different universes as well. That was something he was going to have his daughter understand soon. Emma trained in copying items with essence in them. She started by not taking it as essence but as something completely different. She started understanding energy fundamentally by using it. Absorbing would have made it much easier, but as she couldn't absorb it. Not in the way a will absorbed the energy of their world. After gaining some idea of what the energy of the explosion essence was, she tried to recreate it herself using the pure energy inside of her. She reached deep into herself and pulled out energy as she always did, except, this time, she willed it to be the same type as the one that she had come to understand. As the energy came out, Ning watched excitedly. This was the first time his daughter was trying this, so he was extra anxious. He looked at the essence that came out and realized that he could feel the explosion essence from it. The energy flowed onto her left hand, opposite her right hand which held the conduit. Emma was very excited to see the orange energy that landed on her palm and more excited when she started forming it into a ball. However, as she made it, something occurred to her that caused the essence to grow unstable. As the energy was explosion essence now, it immediately exploded the moment it got the change. The explosion filled the area around her and her father, the force of it landing on the two of them. The massive sound of the boom was enough to startle anyone, but the two father and daughter were barely fazed. Ning moved his hand and the barrier he had set around the room covered until it was nothing. Along with it, it took away the fire and smoke. Ning coughed a little. What happened? He asked with a somewhat confused expression. He hadn't realized what had happened at the end there. Emma gave an awkward smile. I focused so much on the energy that I forgot to make the object itself, she said. It got unstable then and exploded. Ning stared at her with an unbelieving face. Really? He asked. Emma nodded. Ning couldn't help but let out a chuckle at the situation. All right, try again. The second time, Emma succeeded. She had not only managed to perfectly copy the type of energy, but she had also perfectly formed the object as well. The energy and matter mixed together were stable. Ning took the two objects from her hand. One a naturally forming natural conduit, and one made by her. System, give me the differences, he said, and the system listed down a few problems that were in Emma's conduit. Ning ignored differences such as shape, size, and weight, and even ignored the fact that the two conduits had different spirits in them. After learning about the triangle of existence, the system started talking about them more freely now, no longer bothering to hide information. The spirits in these conduits were barely any stronger than ones in a tree or in a sea. All it did was take a person's mental command and apply it to the energy flowing through it. The main differences that Ning found were mainly two. First, the natural conduit was more stable with its energy. Having formed from nature, it needed to be stable to have survived this long. The conduit Emma made was slightly more unstable and could break down as a conduit if used too much. Second, the natural conduit accepted a higher grade of essence than what Emma created. Ning quickly knew the problem for that one, however. Emma had yet to properly sense essence after all, so the mistake was obvious. Once she had reached the essence sense realm, it would be much easier. For that, however, he would have to wait until she could agree too. This was her adventure after all. Ning put both the conduits into his storage bag. Again, he said. Emma looked at him blankly. What do I copy? She asked. The explosion conduit, of course, Ning said. Make what you make, again. Oh, Emma said, a little surprised. I thought I was going to have to make another one. No, that you won't have to do, Ning said. Emma hesitated a bit this time around. Without something to constantly refer to, it became hard to make the item. Her memory was good, yes, but that didn't feel as reliable as the object in her hand would be. Still, she gritted her teeth and got to work. 5 minutes later, there was another explosion conduit in front of her. Only this time neither of them had to check to see that it was obviously worse. I tried my best, Emma said with a slightly disheartened look. but that is the best I can do, it seems. No need to be sad, Ning said. This is training. Here, try again. He handed back the original natural conduit and had her try again. He also told her what flaws she had and even asked if she wanted to try and break through. Emma thought for a bit and said that she wanted to train like this for a while before she broke through. Ning nodded and let her do what she wanted to do. While she practiced, he did his own thing. With the last 2 cores yet to reach the essence manifestation realm, he wanted to be done with it as soon as possible. He pulled out the continental sword and using it he started absorbing essence from a pure crystal in front of him. It was a weird technique that his system had taught him, which was the only way he could absorb so many of the weird essences. By dragging the pure essence through his sword that had almost all essences in existence, he could change the property and absorb it himself. While his daughter trained in making conduits and reached success after success, he managed to finally make all of his cores reach the essence manifestation realm. Ning made his way to the trouble store to meet up with Byron. You are here, Byron said with a hint of surprise in his voice. It was still morning, so he hadn't started working just yet and would at any time. I had thought you had already left. Oh no, I was just in my room doing nothing but, he slowed down. Actually, guess what I was doing? Huh? Byron looked confused to hear that. What do you mean guess? Guess what? He couldn't make sense of Ning's words, but under Ning's coercion, he gave up and looked for whatever it was that he could find. However, it didn't even take him 3 seconds to realize what was different when he did give it some thought. His eyes widened. But it hasn't even been that long, he said. How are you so close to entering the essence soul realm? Ooh, am I? Ning asked. I was only trying to show off the essence manifestation realm that I reached. Even that alone was enough for Byron to be surprised about. There was no way of telling if he would have outright fainted if Ning made any mentions of all of his 8 cores reaching the same level. Congratulations, Byron said, his face still keeping the look of shock he felt. Ning sat by the side. I came to practice making some swords and shields, he said. Now that I reached the essence manifestation realm, it should be possible, right? Why yes, Byron said. Do you want to test it out now? Sure, Ning said. My daughter will be out for a few hours, so I will need to practice before she returns. Let's start now. Ning started walking to the backyard while Byron quickly followed him. Byron couldn't help but look back outside, thinking of Ning's daughter going around the city. He wished no other problems such as last time would come about once again. I'm surprised you didn't leave the city already, Byron said as he followed. After the commotion you caused over 2 weeks ago, I thought you would have left. Well, no, Ning said. My daughter had something to do, so I couldn't leave. We will probably be leaving in a day or 2 though. Apparently, she learned about a fun city in the northeast. Something called Ulharis City? Ulharis City, Byron corrected him. Is your daughter interested in the Star Beast Institute? That's it, Ning said. That's why she wants to join. That Beast Institute. She kept telling me about it the last few days. I wonder where she learned it from. It's actually a pretty big topic in the town, especially around this time, Byron said. They will have their first round of admission in half a month, so many people make their way there around this time. Is that so? Ning asked curiously. Why from here? Well, it's easier for people to travel through the sea around this area than go through the road. Considering the recent increase in bandits, not many like taking the long path there. Instead, they just come to the ocean, take a quick trip to one of the port cities, and take a short way there, Byron explained. I see, Ning said as they arrived at the working field. Well, I'll have to think about it if there's only half a month left. But that's for later. Let me make a conduit right now. He cracked his knuckles and looked around. What should start with? Any idea? He asked. Do wind, Byron suggested. It is the easiest and it's not very concerning even if you mess up. Wind, okay, wind it is, Ning said and got ready. Byron stood quietly, watching Ning begin to convert the air in the surroundings into an artifact. However, even as seconds passed, Ning didn't start. Byron turned around to look at Ning with a confused look on his face. What's wrong? Byron asked. Do you need me to teach you how it should be done? No, that's I'm fine on, Ning said. I'm just wondering if maybe lightning isn't the proper essence I should use it with. I know lightning and wind have some common in them when chi is involved, but since chi is not involved, I wonder if I should go a different route. What? She. What do you mean? Byron asked. Isn't your core lightning? Just use it. There's no point in dawdling around unless you have a wind essence crystal. But I wouldn't suggest using those for your first time. Oh no, Ning said. I wasn't thinking of using a crystal at all. I was thinking of using a core. A different core. Byron's face went blank for a few seconds. A different what? Instead of answering, Ning switched his cores. Of the other 7 essence cores he had, the lightning switched with one that was in his opinion the closest to wind. Sound essence core. As soon as the switch happened, Byron sensed it as well. His eyes widened in shock. You are. SSHH, Ning said before giving a wide grin. How is this? Is this good enough for wind? Byron was too shocked to answer. Well, I suppose I'll have to find out on my own. Ning sent out sound essence from his core and sent it into the air. The air was constantly moving, so unlike rocks, he couldn't capture it all at once. What he did capture glowed with a soft greenish-white hue and hung in the air. Byron quickly realized what was happening and stepped aside. He knew that it was going to be impossible to breathe at any moment now. As Ning continued, he felt the air around himself grow still, and he could no longer breathe any air. Not that breathing problems had ever been a priority for him. He continued using his essence to capture as much of the air as he could. 5 minutes later, he was staring at a massive solid chunk of air that had gone still, glowing with a soft green-white color. Now that he had made the hybrid form, it was time to pull it all together into an object. Once the matter-essence hybrid air was ready to be properly converted, Ning pulled on it. The thing became thin and stretched as Ning pulled on it. Byron watched from the side, slightly nodding as what Ning did was correct to his eyes. He had to pull it and then start hammering on it too. Ning didn't bring out any hammer and simply continued pulling on the thing without stopping. Byron wanted to tell Ning that he was doing it wrong, that he had to change it as he pulled, but he didn't want to distract him right now. He would have to hope that Ning knew what he was doing. In the meanwhile, he moved away the other people from around the area just in case. Ning continued pulling, and whatever he pulled would remain in his hands, grasped tightly. He pulled and pulled and pulled until there was nothing to pull anymore. Everything he could pull was all in his hand. So, there was only one thing left to do. To convert what was in his hand into a worthy conduit. There were many things he could do with it, but for practice purposes, he decided to go with a short sword. He closed his eyes and visualized what a short sword looked like. As Byron had mentioned when teaching him about it, the hammer and anvil were all there to make him believe that he was making a sword. It was to help him visualize the transformation from a matter-essence hybrid to an actual weapon. If one could do the same without using anything, then they wouldn't need any hammer or anvil. Ning focused on the image of the short sword in his mind. His consciousness returned to a time when he made every form of artifact for a very long time. A short sword to him from all those years ago was something as simple as a flick of a wrist. With his eyes closed, he slowly opened his palm, pulling the amalgamation of matter and essence. As he pulled, the object slowly took shape. Without getting hammers, the object became flat. Without being sharpened, it gained an edge. With just a single pull, the sword formed in its entirety. Byron watched in absolute shock as something that would have taken him minutes to hammer and form was instead made in seconds by Ning by simply pulling on it. He wanted to believe that he was seeing wrong, but with all that had happened around Ning, he simply couldn't. Ning opened his eyes and looked at the dagger in his hand. The greenish-white hue had now lost a lot of its color, now retaining a mostly colorless body with a very vague inkling of any other color. Ning took the blade and flipped it a bit. "Ooh, I did it," he said excitedly. "Is this how it's supposed to be done?" He turned to look at Byron, who still didn't speak. "Hey," Ning shouted at him, catching his attention. "Huh?" The man looked at Ning with a scared expression. "How did I do?" he asked. "Is this good enough?" He tossed the short sword to Byron, who quickly caught it. Byron gave it a cursory glance and then gave some deeper inspection when he saw something that he couldn't believe was there. Details. The short sword that was casually made had details that would take a normal smith a long time to carve into it. He couldn't believe it. "How did you get this hexagon and text here?" Byron asked. "Never mind that, how did you make this sword in just a single pull?" "Ah, you said that I needed to be able to visualize to make the conversion, right? So I did." I visualized the sword in my hand and it simply came to be, Ning said. But how? Byron couldn't help but ask. Oh that, Ning said. I actually used to be a smith too. Well, not just smith. I used to make all types of weapons and artifacts. Still do sometimes, but not to the same level as I did back then. You worked in a smithy? Byron asked. I owned a smithy, Ning said with a big smile. Ah, those were the good days. I was world famous for my artifacts. I used to have so many people working under me. What happened? You got bored? Byron asked. No, not bored. Things didn't align with the, royals of that place. They wanted me to make weapons for war, and I didn't want that. I had to leave the smithy behind and leave. Ah, that sucks, Byron said. That's all right, Ning said. Anyway, you gonna judge the sword? Oh right, Byron quickly said. This is incredible. I don't need to judge to know that. Ooh, is it? Ning asked excitedly. What would you rate it from 1 to 100? 1 being absolutely garbage and 100 being the most amazing thing you've ever seen. Byron thought for a bit and answered, something like 65. The craftsmanship itself is amazing, but you are lacking volume. Of course, this is just your first work, so I'm sure you'll do much better soon enough. Volume, huh? Ning thought to himself. It was true that he had used not as much air as he should have. This amount of air was basically nothing for the sword, especially since man-made conduits were only as good as the amount of material that had gone into making it. His continental sword had a continent inside of it, so he could create as large a structure as he wanted without worry. But something that used a small amount of materials would only be able to produce a small amount when used. 65 huh? Ning thought to himself. Yeah, I'm not going to leave until I cross 80 at the very least. Ning went back to training again, and under Byron's supervision, he managed to make 5 more different kinds of artifacts. 2 swords, 1 spear, 1 staff, and an armor. Every single one of them was greater than 70 points, according to Byron, with the final armor reaching as much as 83 points from him. After a few days of training, Ning became proficient in the art of converting. In fact, his improvement came at such a rapid pace that Byron couldn't help but look in shock at it all. For now, Ning had stuck to elements that were more naturally available, such as air, water, earth, fire, and light, but soon enough he would start focusing on new ones. At the same time, Emma had gone around the city and had all the fun she could have had here. So, it was getting close to the time for them to leave. You are finally leaving? Byron asked. He had known this day was coming for a while, and now that it was here, he couldn't help but feel emotional. Over the past couple of days, Ning had not only trained but also helped him a lot. Mayor Trouble had to step down as mayor due to his neck injury, which would take a long time to heal. His son was barely good at anything other than making use of his father's money, so soon there would be a new mayor, one chosen by the town's people. There was a chance that his cousin would end up as the mayor, but that did not stop him from wanting to become one as well. He wanted to become a mayor. The Star Beast Institute is opening soon and we need to go there quickly to register, Ning told Byron. I came to say goodbye. Byron nodded. Thank you for everything you did for me, he said. I won't forget your help. Haha, I barely did anything, Ning said in a fit of laughter. Byron smiled, but he knew in his heart how much help Ning had been. His appearance had changed so much for him, even though on the outside it would appear simple to him. Anyway, I'll visit you if I can, but I rarely ever return to a city after I've left, Ning said. So, here's a parting gift. Ning tossed something toward Byron, who quickly caught it. He looked at the item in his hand and was surprised to see that it was a storage item. What is this? He looked up to ask, but Ning was already walking away. Goodbye, and take care, Ning spoke loudly as he left. Byron was left where he was alone, with the storage item in his hand. He was confused about what it was, so he moved to a more secure location to check it. He ended up pulling out a fire axe. The axe looked familiar to him for a moment and remembered that it was one that Ning had made a few days ago. He's leaving this with me, he wondered. It wasn't the best conduit he had seen made by someone here, but it was definitely a top-tier item, especially considering the maker was only in the essence manifestation realm. This would most definitely sell for quite a bit of money. He pulled out the next item, which was a light sword. This too was something he made, Byron thought with a weird look on his face. Is this something he wants me to sell as well? Byron kept pulling more and more. A fire armor. A wind dagger. A water staff. An earth spear. A light shield. More and more equipment kept coming out from the storage item, and Byron realized that Ning had left all of it to him. He couldn't imagine just how much this would fetch him. This was something that would have taken him an entire month to work on. However, it wasn't over at all. Byron knew of all the items that Ning had made, or at least thought he did. However, given that the storage item still seemed to hold quite a bit in it, he wondered if Ning had made it even while he wasn't at the shop. He pulled out the next item in the storage and was surprised that he got a frozen flower. A flower? He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. He was somewhat taken aback to see a flower, but when he let his senses fall onto it, he realized something. An ice conduit, he thought. He couldn't believe that was what it was. How could Ning ever make an ice conduit? How did he make one in the shape of a flower? Where did he get the ice from? Multiple thoughts ran across Byron's mind until the correct one passed through it. A natural conduit. His eyes widened in shock. These sorts of things were rare to come by and were extremely expensive. He couldn't believe that Ning was just giving it to him. He pulled out the next thing in the box, which was a hoof-shaped transparent substance that glowed bright white. A crystal conduit. A natural crystal conduit. Byron couldn't help himself from celebrating. He pulled out more and more. A magma conduit in the shape of a glowing rock. An earth conduit in the shape of a beast's paw. A lightning conduit, in the shape of a rhino's horn. Many natural conduits came flying out of the storage. There were exactly 11 of them. 11 natural conduit. Selling a single one was enough to earn a fortune, and Ning had given him 11. Byron had to calm his heart as he looked through them. He didn't want to sell them. He could imagine the many things he would do with them. And somehow, there was still more stuff in the storage. Byron pulled out a book with a note sticking out of it. He pulled out the note and read it. This is an absorption technique that will help you improve quickly. Oh. Byron was a little surprised. An absorption technique, huh? Byron had an absorption technique, but he couldn't call it that good. He had managed to buy one of the best in the market, but the ones in the market were rarely good. The best ones were kept by large clans and organizations or were sold in massive auction houses. Those were the sort of things that he could never be a part of. He pulled out the next stuff from the storage, and more books came out. As before, a note stuck out from it that Byron quickly read. These are some of the best skills you can come across. Make good use of it. Skills. Byron's eyes widened. He had thought that he couldn't feel shocked at this point, and yet he still did. Skills were one thing that he always lacked. His uncle never gave him the good ones, and the ones he did buy were truly not very good. He quickly opened the books and read through them. Each and every single skill in there was simply incredible. His eyes moistened at the thought that an outsider was helping him more than his own blood relatives. Finally, he brought out the last item, a pile of papers that Byron couldn't make sense of. There was a note sticking out in it as well. This is a list of all the assets and inheritance that your uncle stole from you. It includes the evidence that it was stolen as well. Put it to good use. Byron's eyes went wide with that. His life was finally going to go in a better direction. Ning walked along the road with Emma sitting on top of Umbra, who walked slowly. They had left the Tribal City and had come out of the northern forest to make their way east toward the Ulharis city. Lori sat on top of Ning's head, curiously looking around the entire surroundings, while Lyra was staring at Emma, who was training. The surrounding at the moment was a sparse forest that was transitioning into grassland. The road itself was wide and flat, but it was still a dirt road. There were houses in the distance, mostly at the foot of a mountain far away. Close to the road, there weren't any houses at all. People feared the consequences of having a house close to the road, especially with banditry being quite prevalent this far out in the Empire. Carriages rolled past Ning's group, who were obviously very slow as they were just walking. However, they weren't alone in walking. Many others walked there as well. Not everyone was rich enough to afford a carriage in the Empire, but everyone wanted to go to the Starbeast Institute. As a result, they walked. Emma focused her energy on creating a tiny amulet that had a large space in it. After Ning asked her to try and make it one last time, she had done it successfully after a few tries. However, that required his help. Now, she was supposed to make it all on her own. This is hard, she said. I need the essence again. Sure. Ning said and placed his hand in front of his daughter as his essence core switched. The lightning essence core turned to that of a space essence core and space essence flowed out of his hand. Emma tried to understand the space essence and tried again. She tried for a while and frowned. I can't do it, she said, dropping her arms as she gave up. Can't I just make normal ones? Storage items with essence is hard. I can do it in a snap with chi or mana. Nope, you have to use space essence, Ning said. This is practice. There are times when it will be hard. You can't just give up. I know, Emma said. But this one is particularly time-consuming, and I can't even concentrate with all the carriages going past us. Why did we not take a carriage too? You want Umbra to pull the carriage? Ning asked. Emma looked toward Umbra and shook her head. No, she's already doing enough carrying me, she said. Umbra chuckled a little. I couldn't pull the carriage if you wanted me to. I'm strong enough that it doesn't matter to me. And I'm not so prideful that I won't help pull my friend's carriage. No, you don't have to, Emma said quickly. We're friends, not masters and servants. Umbra simply smiled and did not say anything. What servants? Lyra asked. You'll learn once you're big enough, Emma said. Let me focus on this, okay? Lyra nodded and continued watching. Emma tried her best for the next 2 hours. At that time, their group reached a small town that needed to be passed through on the way to Ulharis City. The town had a local market that everyone stopped around to buy from and go on their way to the other bigger cities. Ning noticed a couple of people walking around with glowing fire and wind spears that surprised him. Soldiers? He spoke to himself softly. The men wore bright red and orange uniforms with a symbol on their chest of crowns made of fire. The insignia of the Bright Fire Empire. Soldiers this far out in the Empire, the bandit problem must be getting worse and worse, Ning said softly. Humans killing humans, Umbra said softly. No different than a beast. Ning nodded. Papa, Emma said excitedly. Look, she handed him the item she had just finished making. Ning took the item, an amulet that hung around a thick string that didn't feel like it would easily rip. The amulet looked simple, for the most part with a thin golden frame around a large deep blue gem in the center. The blue gem was what gave the amulet its spatial storage. Not bad, Ning said. See, I told you could do it. Emma smiled back. Well, I made it, but I don't know if I can make it anymore, she said. Why not? Ning asked. I barely have enough energy for 2 more of those, she said. After that, I would have to go back to Earth and I would miss the registration. You don't have to go back, Ning said. You can stick around without the energy. That's all right. I don't feel all right sticking around without my energy, she said. I won't be making any more of this. I had hoped to let you be a normal girl without any power before sending you to the institute, but if you want to keep your energy, then you're free to do so, Ning said. This is your adventure, do whatever you wish. Emma grinned. Thank you. After buying a few snacks in the small town, Ning and the rest headed back onto the road and continued their journey toward the east where Ulharis City lay. Even as night fell and they came across another large forest, they continued walking. With their strength, they had no need to sleep at all. Only Lori and Lyra slept and Umbra kept them on her underside, tied with shadow essence. Emma walked at this point, passing the many people who sat on the side. Most of them were resting in the night, with a few staying up to keep watch. The chance of bandits coming this far into the road with so many humans and beasts was a low possibility, but they still didn't want to leave it up to chance. Ning and the rest continued on for a while longer before they suddenly stopped. Far away, they could hear something. Screams. It took a second for Ning to get all the information he needed from the system. Then, he teleported away, leaving Emma and the rest behind. He arrived in the thicket of the jungle, next to a tree. It was relatively dark, but in front of his eyes, everything was as bright as day. He saw a young man with a missing limb holding onto a wooden axe as he lay to the side. Next to him was a man with a scraggly beard holding onto a fire sword that was hidden on his other side and barely peeking through to Ning. He had a bloody chest, that he was holding onto, which from what Ning could tell had been the result of the metal weapon in the young man's arm. He dropped to his knees, breathing heavily and with anger clear in his face. A few people arrived right afterward and looked at the situation. They saw the wounded adult and the wounded young man, but they did not notice Ning in the slightest. His perception veil had been working very well. "Oi, old man, you bite the dust yet?" one of the men asked. "Shut up and help me up," the wounded adult said. "Nah, I like the idea of stealing your share of the loot amongst ourselves," the man said. "Say, how much did you loot?" The wounded man frowned and looked at the group in fear that he was going to be killed. He tightened his grip around the weapon he held and prepared himself to use his techniques when it would be needed. Just then, another older man slapped the younger man on the back of his head. "No killing among the crew," he told the young man. "If you don't understand this, you're not welcome here." The younger man frowned before his face changed to a smile. "Haha, I was just joking. Come brother, let me help you." He reached out to the wounded man and pulled him up. He could practically smell the blood from the man's chest. "Wow, the kid got you good, didn't he?" the man asked. "Damn him," the man said. "He's still breathing too. Someone kill him." Yeah, the young man said. "Hey, can someone use some light? I can barely see right now." One of the men at the back pulled out a light sword and used it to light up the surroundings. Only then did they see the situation of the young man better. "He's close to death already," the man helping the wounded man said. "Wouldn't you be happier letting him suffer?" "No, I want him dead," the wounded man grunted between his teeth. "I want him dead and I want him dead now." The man sighed and handed the wounded man over to someone else before making his way toward the young man. He stepped onto the chopped-off limb of the young man who was still holding onto the wooden axe and pried it open from his hands. The man was slightly surprised at how strongly he was still holding onto the axe even when the arm was completely severed. He turned to look at the young man and shook his head. "If your village had just decided not to fight back, you would have all been alive right now," he said before a nasty grin came across his face. "Except for the few that I would have obviously killed." "You like killing, do you?" Ning's voice drifted behind him. "Haha, yeah. That's why I joined the—" Before he could finish his words, he heard shouts and cries from the other men behind him and quickly turned around to see what was going on. That was when he noticed Ning and realized that the person he had just answered was not one of his fellow bandits. He quickly got on guard, his eyes narrowing to look at Ning more carefully. "Who are you?" he asked. "You're not a villager." "That I am not," Ning said. "But you are a bandit, so it doesn't make much difference anyway. You're going to die in the end all the same." The man stared at Ning for a moment before letting out a chuckle. Ha ha, are you blind, bastard?" the man asked. "Do you not see my friends behind me?" "No, I am not blind," Ning said, "though I am afraid you might be." With a snap of his finger, a bolt of lightning fell onto the man, targeting his eyes. In the next moment, the man's eyes were charred as wave after wave of pain went to his head. He cried in pain, and that was all he could do. Multiple men instantly tried to attack Ning, but he didn't give them any chance at all. His core switched immediately, going from lightning to sound. Then he snapped once again. The single snap of his finger amplified in just their direction, reaching a crescendo that caused everyone to fall to their ground out of pain. The sound caused their ears to hurt and them to feel nauseated. The dizziness made it impossible to stand up and they tried to close their ears, but that didn't drive away the sound. The bandits wanted nothing more than to tear their own ears out at this point. In fact, a few even tried to tear their ears out and one amongst them was even successful. Ning finally stopped using his skills and gave the men some relief, but that would only be for a brief moment. He grabbed onto the blind man in front of him and tossed him into the group of men who were just standing up. He looked at everyone waiting for them to get back up. Once they were up, he spoke. "Feel the pain of everyone you killed today and all the days before this," he said as he flicked his wrist. He didn't use essence and instead just had the system use a technique for him. Then came the cries of the people who felt the pain that they had inflicted onto others, all combined at once, which was going to last forever. And they couldn't even feint to relieve themselves from the pain. The only way to get out of this was to kill themselves. Ning returned to Emma and Umbra with the young, wounded boy in his arm. Emma's eyes immediately widened in horror when she saw the state that the boy was in. She quickly felt the wrist on his left arm and knew that he was alive. "Thank God," she said quietly. "What happened?" "Bandits," Ning asked simply. "Bandits?" Emma asked with a frown on her face. "And you dealt with them?" "Yeah, punished the ones that were after him and killed the rest," Ning said. "I couldn't save his village though. Everyone was dead by the time I got there." How awful. Emma couldn't help but say. She could feel anger boiling in her heart, and it made her even more angry remembering the fact that there was never anything she could do about it. She could never hurt anyone. That was a curse for her in moments like these. Heal him already, Emma said. Why is he still hurt? Oh God, he's even missing an arm. Ning placed the young boy on the floor, laying him down on the thick grass in the forest, next to the road. Actually, I wanted you to heal him, Ning said. Emma paused. What? She looked up at Ning. I heal him? Yeah, Ning said. Emma looked confused. But I don't know how to do it. I don't have chi or mana, she said. But you have pure energy, Ning said, but I don't know how. You do, Ning said. It's all about your intention. Let your energy know what you want to do and it will do it. Emma's face turned to a frown. You should heal him, Papa, she said. I can't guarantee I can do it correctly. It's all right, Ning said. Just do your best. Emma worried still. She looked at the young man who was so young and found herself wanting to help him, but she couldn't. She just couldn't. I don't know if I have enough energy, she said. I spent most of it in that artifact you asked me to make earlier today. Emma, Ning said in a somewhat annoyed manner. Heal him already. If you fail, I will fix it. Don't worry and just do it. He won't feel any pain, she asked. He is unconscious, Ning answered. I doubt he will feel anything for a while now. And my energy? She asked. After this, I'll run out completely. What do I do then? Didn't you want a normal life, where you wanted to be a normal girl without any powers aside from what everyone else had? Ning asked. This is your opportunity now. Give up what you have and you can achieve it. For now, heal this young man. Emma finally nodded. She knelt down before the wounded young man and looked over at the young man more carefully now. The missing arm was what she had to focus on for sure, but there were other locations where he was wounded as well. There were scratches on his forehead, a cut on his cheek, and some wounds on his neck. His left hand was bloody as well, the skin on his palm scraped away. Emma felt sad for the young man and quickly took a deep breath, trying to get her emotions out of the situation. She needed a calm mind for what she was going to have to do the next task. She had practice in converting her energy to unique energies. Matter was of little difficulty. What she needed to focus on was remembering how the human body was. She needed to remember the bones, the muscles, the blood, the nerves, the sinew, the connective tissues, the skin. Since she was going to focus on just the right arm, leaving the rest of the injuries for her father to deal with, she needed to make the nails as well. Fortunately, there weren't any organs that she had to make in the right arm. She tried to heal him with her arms hovering on top of the young man, but that did little to give her any confidence. Instead, she placed her palm shoulder on the young man, right next to where the arm had been ripped out from. She took another deep breath and released it. Her eyes opened and a soft glow erupted from her palm, some of it leaking outside, but most of it entering the young man's body. The pure energy held her sole intention at the moment. Create a new arm. The muscle suddenly grew out of the young man's arm, and within it, the bone grew. It grew out with connective tissues holding the overall shape together. First, it grew to the elbow, then to the wrist. From there, the palm and the 5 fingers grew. Bones, muscles, nerves, everything grew at once, nothing coming before, nothing coming after. Emma didn't have enough knowledge to do it one at a time. She only remembered what she saw when most limbs were regrown and simply followed that intention. The boy's arm grew completely as Emma pushed all of her internal energy into it. She hadn't realized it just yet, but she had even taken the essence in her core and converted it into pure energy before converting that into matter for the young man's arm. She stepped back, surprisingly tired for some reason. I did it, she said and paused for a moment before looking at her father. Didn't I? Ning looked at the young man, a curious smile on his face. I'm not sure, he said. You might have gone beyond even. Emma got curious now. What does that mean? She asked. Nothing, Ning said, quickly bringing his arm over the boy's body. With but a thought, the rest of the wounds were instantly healed, with nothing problematic remaining in his body at all. The boy now seemed no different from any other boy who was sleeping peacefully, as if his world hadn't turned upside down just an hour ago. Ning let him have his few hours of peace. The boy wept and wept and wept, and neither Ning nor Emma did anything to stop him. They understood that he needed to cry, and only an hour into his crying did Emma even try to console him. Having learned his family was dead, the boy couldn't stop his tears. His parents and younger brother, whom he loved so very much, were no longer going to be there to greet him when he woke up. He would never get to feel the safety of his father, the warmth of his mother, or the playfulness of his brother. His innocence had been stripped away from him by the bandits now, and he could only cry to show for it. "They're all dead?" he asked Ning after a while, his eyes burning with fury, his palms clenched tightly at the side. "Yes," Ning said. "After I saved you, I went back to the village, but everyone had been killed. I killed the remaining bandits though, if that means something to you." The young boy thought for a moment. "I want revenge, but I'm too weak to get it even if they were alive. So I can simply thank you for helping me achieve what I couldn't have." Ning couldn't help but smile at the young boy's words. "That is the least I could do after what I witnessed," he said. "Do you need some time to process this? Take all the time you can." "I do," the boy said. "But I don't know if I can process it anymore." Ning doubted he wouldn't need to process it any further. He had probably just exhausted himself after crying for an hour. Give some time and the tears would return once again. "What's your name?" Ning asked. Haddon Milker," the boy said. "Milker?" Ning asked. "Yes?" the boy said innocently before remembering something. "Oh, our family had a few cows in the village and we were the people that everyone got their milk from. So everyone called us Milkers and we became the Milker family." "I see," Ning said. "And how old are you?" "I'll be 13 in." He thought for a bit. 2 months? "I don't know the exact day. Mother kept track of it for me." Ning nodded. "My name is Ning," he told the boy. "This is my daughter Emma, and this is..." "Daughter?" The boy looked confused. He looked at him and then at Emma and back to him, his face frowning at each instance. "You're lying, right?" "No, he is my father," Emma said. "But he's so young," Haddon said. "See? I told you to make yourself older. You always go back to the young face," Emma said. "Whatever," Ning said, not bothering to discuss this right now. He looked back at the young boy and spoke. "Come on, let's go back to the village. There is something you have to do." Haddon looked puzzled. He looked at Emma for any hint of what was going on, but she said nothing. He stood up to walk, but Ning didn't let him. He lifted the boy directly onto Umbra's back and let him ride her all the way through. Haddon clutched onto Umbra's slick fur for dear life, horrified at the speed she moved, worried that he would fall off if he didn't hold on tighter. He hadn't noticed shadow tendrils from Umbra holding him steady on top of her, as she would her 2 children when they rode along with her. Umbra was a little surprised by his grasp, especially his strength. She hadn't expected someone with no essence core to have such a strong grip. She ran undeterred by the terrain, zooming through the forest as if it were her playground. She was following Ning and Emma, both of whom were faster than her. A few minutes later, she finally slowed down as she came out of the forest and smelt smoke in the air. She came to a half right outside of the village where almost all of it had burned down. Haddon finally opened his eyes, looking at the vast scene of death and destruction in front of him. His grief that he thought wouldn't come back so soon had returned once again and tears flowed down his eyes again. He slowly let go of Umbra's fur and got off her, landing on the grass with naked feet. Ning stood in the center of the village and Emma was with him, looking at everything that was there. Haddon slowly made his way to them, looking at the burned-down houses around him. The smoke filled his nose, forcing him to close his nose with his hands. He teared up, both from the smoke and the tragedy of what he saw. He recognized all of them. The one he passed just then belonged to Cerie's uncle. The one to his right was his friend Jalen's house. Further up was the blacksmith's house and next to that was the tailor's house. Then it was old lady Mayan's house and finally his house. He stood in front of his house, looking at the smoke that came off of the wood that had all collapsed and then burned away. Nothing of his that was important remained at all. He walked in. The ground beneath it still had smoldering coals, but he didn't care. He had to find his parents and brother. "Haddon." Ning called out. "Not there. Here." The boy turned around. He saw the village center where a large amount of something had been gathered. He wasn't sure what it was, but he went there. Arriving close, he saw the shape of the things he saw. The things wrapped in white clothes. The corpses of the dead. "Come," Ning said. "You should be the one to burn the pyre for their funeral." The boy listlessly walked, not sure what he should even say or do. These are all the dead people? He asked. Yes, Ning said, pointing at 3 corpses that were kept at the center. Those belong to your family. Go say your last words before sending their souls to the afterlife. Haddon watched the burning pyre of 100 corpses, his family's corpse in the center of it all. A deep silence fell in the location, only broken by the crackling fire. Occasionally, one could hear a sniffling or two, both by Haddon and Emma. Emma had thought she could contain her emotions, but this was too much for her. The death, the tragedy, it was overwhelming her. Haddon still teared up, sniffling a little from time to time, but he couldn't flat out cry anymore. There just wasn't enough tear in his eyes. His eyes were now as dry as they were hollow. He stood there, regardless of the heat of the fire, watching the last embers fly away as he imagined his family's souls had. He got down to his knees and prayed as the last wisps of flame went out and nothing but smoke and ash remained in front of him. The funeral was over. Ning walked up to the young man and handed him something. Haddon took it without thought and noticed that he had been given a small metal pot with a lid on top. What is this? He asked. Place your family's ash in here, he said, so they can be with you no matter where you are. The young boy looked puzzled. Ning knew there was no such tradition on this side of the world, but he had him do so anyway. Whatever it was that he would need to deal with the grief, he would provide it for him. The boy walked up to the hot ashes and started swooping up the ash with his own 2 hands. His left hand burned as he did so, but his right hand didn't feel much pain from the heat. Not that he was paying it any attention right now. After gathering the ashes, he walked out in a daze. He looked back at the ashes, then around the village at the many houses. They were ashes as well. Not even the cattle had remained. Only death permeated the village. So, what do you plan on doing next? Ning asked the young boy, cutting through his daze. What? He asked, before comprehending the question. Next? I haven't had the time to think. You can take your time, Ning said. Do you want to? You killed the bandits, right? Haddon asked all of a sudden. Ning paused. He had been ready to invite the young man to come with them so he could get him to a city where he could start a new life. He hadn't expected to be asked that. I did, Ning answered straightforwardly. How did you do that? The boy asked. Ning frowned a little. What do you mean how? He asked. I just went after them and killed them. But how are you so strong to do that? He asked. How are all of you so strong? Ah, Ning understood. Do you know what essence is? The boy nodded hesitantly. I've heard of it, he said. I've never truly seen it being used. Well, I used essence, Ning said. The boy's eyes widened. So you can use essence? And you're strong with it? He asked. Pretty strong, Ning said. Can you teach me? The boy asked. Ning smiled. He had a feeling the talk was going in this direction. I can, he said. But why should I? The boy's momentary happiness fleeted away when he heard those words. Because, I want to learn, he said. That's not enough for me to teach you, he said. Emma turned to look at him with questioning eyes. She knew her father would give a butterfly a technique to turn back to a caterpillar if it just asked him for it. So, seeing him make it difficult for the young man didn't feel like himself. Haddon paused for a moment. What could he say here that would help him learn what he wanted? What could he say that would make Ning happy with his answers? He thought of many things, but truth seemed the best approach in his mind. I want to be strong. He found his words. I want to be strong enough to protect myself and anyone I care about in the future. I do not wish for me or anyone else to have to go through the same tragedy I went through. I want the power so I can give myself and others a good life. Ning showed no emotions on his face for a moment, making the young boy think he had done something wrong. However, a grin leaked through his stoic expression and he couldn't help but fully smile. That is what I wanted to hear, he said. I like those words. From today onwards you will be my disciple. Are you okay with that? The boy's eyes widened. Yes, he shouted, happiness and sadness mixing together in his face. He fought hard to keep back his tears this time. Ning rubbed the young boy's hair. You won't have to worry about anything else now, he said. I will make you the strongest person in the world. Then you will no longer have to worry about losing anyone else. The boy nodded. Say your last goodbyes to this place, Ning said. We will be leaving now. Yes, the boy said before hurriedly continuing. teacher." Ning smiled again and left him there for a moment. Emma quickly followed behind him, asking why he didn't accept him immediately. "I needed him to figure out what it was he wanted from the power he would get," Ning said. "If he has a goal, he will have an easier time going through hard times." "Will he even have a hard time when he's training with you?" Emma asked. "Oh, don't think that I can't be a harsh teacher," he said. "I only don't put you through any of it because you're my daughter. For the rest of them, I don't mind letting them feel a bit of pain before they get strong." Haddon ate a sandwich while sitting on top of the bed. The sandwich had 2 thick pieces of bread on either side and lightly charred and saucy chicken meat on the inside, along with a bunch of greens and onions. He munched on it excitedly, making sure to let Ning and Emma know that he hadn't eaten something so good ever in his life. They were in a small tavern room in a small city just a day more walk away from Ulharis City. If it were just them, Ning would have decided to walk non-stop, but with a kid this young, especially one that had been through so much today, they decided to take a break. Emma ate another sandwich just as the boy too. With all of her energy spent, she started feeling hungry all of a sudden. Only Ning didn't feel any hunger at all. They went to sleep after eating, the boy sleeping next to Ning. He cried for some time while clutching his new necklace before going to sleep. Come next day, he was ready to go to a new city. He rode on top of Umbra after walking for a while and played along with Lyra and Lori, who were getting familiar with him after a day. He looked around the roadway as they walked, seeing the many new people and carriages and beasts and surroundings, and it was overwhelming him. His village had been about over 2 hours away from the main road, and nearly a day's walk away from any other cities or towns. As such, he had rarely been on the main road and had only always been in the village and the mountainous forest next to them. Seeing the many people and beasts and whatnot was extremely new to him. He would audibly gasp when seeing a new beast or get scared when a carriage zoomed past him at a quick speed. From time to time, he would cluck onto the necklace that hung around his neck, looking for courage. "All right, enough riding," Ning said. "You'll need to walk now." Haddon's heart sank. "But teacher," he cried, "my legs hurt." "Good," Ning said. "Do you think you can become strong without getting hurt? Now come on down and start walking. Lyra, Lori, you two need to walk as well." The 2 children had no qualms about that at all. They both jumped down from their mother's back and started briskly walking along the dirt road. A few hours passed, and Haddon could barely stand. He panted loudly, his feet burning in pain. He would try to stop momentarily to let the legs stop, but Ning would push him to continue moving. Haddon couldn't tell if he had gotten himself a teacher or a torturer. He was finally allowed to ride Umbra again around 2 in the afternoon. The afternoon sun had been especially unbearable for the kid, so Ning decided to let him rest. Emma slowed her pace and walked next to Ning before asking, "Why are you hurting him?" She asked. "Can't you let him be?" "No," Ning said. "I need him to get hurt, to get used to pain." "Why?" Emma asked. She couldn't keep her curiosity away. "Because very soon, I'm going to teach him how to split his core," Ning said with a smile. "And since he hasn't started absorbing essence just yet, he will be able to do it perfectly too." "Oh, you're planning to give him that technique?" Emma asked. "Why not?" Ning asked. "There's no point in keeping it. He might as well learn it and make good use of it." Emma gave a faint hint of a nod. "I suppose," she said. The dirt road turned to cobblestone as they got close to Ulharis City. The crowd around them had gotten larger as well since multiple roads had joined to their road as they got close to the city. A carriage pulled by a flaming horse, 2 people riding on a green, scaly lizard, a person riding on an elephant with crystalline spikes growing out of it, a large blue bird flying in the sky, with people riding on it. There were many fantastical things to see. Even Emma and Ning were amazed by what they saw, let alone Haddon, who couldn't believe his eyes that such things were possible. There were houses around them now, the forests and large fields long gone. As they walked, their houses got more and more congested to the point that there was barely any land left for more houses to be made. And in the distance, there was the massive Ulharis City, with buildings of up to 10 floors sprawling across their vision. One could hear the hubbub of the city from this far away, and the entrance exam to the Star Beast Institute only caused the crowd to get rowdier. Haddon walked now, out of his own volition. His hurting legs meant nothing to him as he walked on the uneven cobblestone, nearly stumbling a few times but his eyes still fixed on the grandness of what he beheld. This is a much bigger city than I thought, Emma said. They weren't lying when they told me it made the Trouble City seem like a newly formed town. It's certainly massive, Ning said. It reminds me of the Black Hawk City. Damn, this might even be bigger than that. They crossed the many houses, made both out of rock and wood. There was a similar system for beasts here where they had to let the beasts stay in a repository if they were to be left alone. Except, unlike Trouble City, there seemed to be no limit on how strong the beasts could be. System. What is the average essence rank of the strongest people in this city? Ning asked. The strongest folks in the city belong to the Star Beast Institute and the mayor's personal guard, and they all have an essence rank of true essence soul on average, with 2 people in the stellar harmony realm. No wonder they don't worry, Ning said before turning to look at his group. Let's go find a place to stay for now. Ning gave the boy a book to read but was surprised as equally he was frustrated to learn that the boy could not read at all. He thought of making a simple artifact to teach him every and all language he ever came across. But it would be better if the boy learned to read the natural way. It wasn't like he would have much to do for a while. So, while he taught the young boy how to split one's core into 2, he also taught him how to read. They were in a tavern on the outer ring of the Ulharis city, staying there for a while before finding some permanent residence. Ning wanted to buy a house or a store and see what he could do. Since converting cost nothing to make for him, he wanted to do that. Open a weapons and armor store, items of which would all be made by him. He sat on the plastered floor of the tavern, showing the young Haddon how to read a certain letter. That's an E, he told him. No, not I, that's this one. E ends up being pronounced A, and I-E. Yeah, I know, it's confusing. As he taught, the door opened up and Emma walked in with the 2 shadow puma cubs in 2 beside her feet. Lyra walked next to Emma to the bed, while Lori jumped onto Ning's gut, crouching in his embrace, looking at what Haddon was doing. What do? He asked. He's studying to read, Ning said. Don't disturb him. Haddon looked at his teacher with a confused look, wondering why he was responding to a beast's purrs. He couldn't understand the beast himself. What is he learning? To split his core? Emma asked, looking over. No, he's learning to read, Ning said. He can't read. Oh, Emma said and then remembered where the boy came from. I guess that makes sense. So, how did it go? Ning asked Emma. Haddon stopped to look back, no longer focused on his studies. The entrance exam is in 6 days, she said. I registered myself. In the next 6 days, I will need to find a beast to take the test with. They mistook me for a 15-year-old so easily. That was something. So everything is set? Ning asked. Not really, Emma said. I'm still concerned about the beast thing. Why? Ning asked. You already have Umbra and Lori and Lyra. Yeah, but I can only choose one, she said, and there are rules and regulations. I can't take with me anything with more than the essence sense realm at the best. That cuts out Umbra from entering. So I only have Lori and Lyra, and I cannot decide which one to take with me. Whichever one I take will be away from their mother for most of their time there, she explained. Ning thought for a moment. That's certainly troublesome, he said. I would say take Lyra with you since she's so close, but Lori is the more active one, so he would be a better fit. That's the conundrum, she said. I thought of asking Umbra too, but it doesn't feel right to ask a mother which child she wants to part with. It just doesn't sit right with me. Choosing without taking in her input will sit worse with you. Talk to her. Tell her everything, Ning said. Then take the ones that are more excited. They should have a say in this too. Ning caressed the cub that was in his lap. Emma slumped back on the bed. Well, I have a few days to choose. I'll do it by then. Night fell soon enough. It had been late when they had arrived, and with Haddon so tired from the journey, as soon as he was done with his dinner, he went to sleep. Emma slept too, although she wasn't fatigued. Ning on the other hand didn't sleep. Instead, he planned what he was going to do for the time he was in this city. He found it better to plan after he knew the city well enough. So, late at night, he left the tavern room to go check the city. Although it was night, the city was bustling with night merchants shouting all around the streets. There were more and more shops as he entered the inner city. The night city was bright with essence lights that hung outside every building. This reminded him of that night when he had gone to White Owl City with Caleb and Ten. He laughed a little when he remembered being taken to the pleasure district. The memory was endearing now. He wondered what the two of them were doing at this time. It had been over a decade since he last saw them, so he grew curious. He could of course find it immediately if he wanted to, but he had found throughout the ages that not knowing, the mystery of it all added a flavor that knowing just couldn't produce. He let go of the thought after a while and made his way to the shop he noticed. King's Gems, the shop was called. It was a shop that sold essence weapons, armor, and shields. Exactly the sort of things Ning was looking forward to. He needed to understand the market if he wanted to sell things. He entered the bright white hall with a chandelier in the ceiling glowing with white orbs of light. The shop was mostly white and gold, even the staff working in it dressed the same. And they were dressed splendidly. This was a fancy shop, and he had come here dressed as he was. Dirty and poor were the only two things one could think of when someone saw them. I should have changed, he thought. He hoped this didn't go where he thought it would go. He sighed for a moment and went on to watch everything that was shown in the shop. Everything the shop had to sell was hung on the walls around him. Ning just had to observe and learn. Ning was surprised to find that the weapons that were sold in the King's Gem were all fancy looking. They seemed to hold style, for something whose substance was the main point of owning it. There were curved blades with ridged edges that made them look fancy, spears with twisted handles, axes that looked as if it had been an artifact taken straight out of a world full of chi or mana. There was armor with faces of wolves and lions and other beasts on its front. There were shields with complex designs on the front that looked like sigils or insignia. Everything had a touch of art to it that was completely unnecessary for the items to be used. So they decided to stand themselves out by using art to draw in customers. Huh? Ning thought to himself. But there was something else that concerned him. Unless he was wrong, he could see that the prices of everything had been higher than what he was used to seeing back in Byron's store at least. By 20% or more at that. Can I help you with anything, sir? A person came up to Ning. Ning looked to the side and saw a man in his early 20s standing next to him, wearing the white and gold of the King's Gem. He was a staff member. Hi, Ning said. I'm just looking around. You don't have to bother with me. It's all right, I'm not bothered, the young man said. Do you have in mind what you want? We have everything you could want. There are more in our warehouse if you're looking to buy some cheaper ones. Or we can custom. No, I'm not here to buy, Ning said quickly. I'm simply here to see how much these weapons are sold for here. The young man looked half confused and half surprised. Can I ask what you are going to do with this? He asked. Open my own business, Ning said with a smile. This could be considered scouting my competition, I suppose. Is this not allowed here? I don't know, the boy said with a frown. This sort of thing doesn't happen here. He considered if he should be sending Ning out or if he should be calling a higher up. They would know what to do. Oh, Ning said. Anyway, my daughter is entering the institute soon, so I needed something to do for the time being. I decided to open a store like this. Although I doubt mine will be this big. My best wishes to you, daughter, the young man said without thinking before pausing. He looked at Ning again, his face full of youth. The young man thought for a moment as to what he had just heard. His daughter. He thought. He wasn't sure how that could be possible. But that was not something he should be concerned about right now. I assume you are a merchant, the man asked. He knew not to judge a man by the clothes they wore. Besides, if he was here to scout, he would do so in clothes that didn't make him truly stand out. Merchant? No, not me, Ning said. I'm a converter. That's why I wanted to start my store. Oh, the man said in surprise before quickly lowering his voice. He looked to the side and dragged Ning toward the side. After looking around to see if anyone was paying attention, he spoke in a low voice. You would be better off joining one of the 4 stores as their converter then, the young man said. The work is slightly harder, but the pay is not bad. Opening your own store, I'm afraid these 4 beasts will devour you. Ning looked at the young man with curious eyes. 4 beasts? He asked. 4 stores, I presume. Care to tell me what they are? The King's Gem, the Sun's Love, Ember's Tear, and Knight's Gear, the young man said. They have a monopoly on the market. I would suggest you don't try to open one since you'll never get better than them. Oh, Ning said with a surprise. He wasn't surprised that there was a monopoly. That sort of thing would be normal anywhere. He was surprised that the young man was helping him. What's your name, if I may ask? The young man looked surprised but spoke in the end. "Daryl Brown," he said. "Daryl," Ning said, landing a hand on his shoulders. "If you ever find yourself in need of a better or less constricting job, find me. I'll give you one." The man frowned. "Are you not listening to me?" The young man asked. "Many have tried what you have, and all have failed." "All or not me," Ning said, walking forward with the young man in tow. "Does your shop buy weapons? Or appraise them at least?" "We have an appraiser in the back. Do you have a weapon to sell?" the young man asked. Ning pulled out a blade he had been making on his way to the city, a blade of gold and white. A light blade, one that shined brighter than most others. The young man wondered how much light he packed into this blade. He could tell Ning's essence rank was still low, but this seemed better than what he should have been able to make. The amount of light in the blade seemed nonsensical, and the young man would be correct. The amount of essence Ning had put into the blade had not just come from a single core of an essence sense rank individual, but one from 8 different such cores. That too while constantly absorbing essence on top of it. Even an essence manifestation realm converter would have to force his all to make such a thing. That made the blade he made quite precious. Ning moved the blade slowly in front of him, soft light trailing behind each stroke. "I want to find out what a blade like this would be worth," he said. "That's possible, isn't it?" A man walked out after Daryl asked for him and took the blade with him to the back. These sorts of things happened all the time, so the man didn't even think to look at Ning before returning to where he came from. Ning looked around the room, waiting, and looked at the prices again. "Aren't these all pricey?" he asked. "Having a fire sword going for 200 fire coins. You would find something like that in a normal store at about 150. "The price them what is normal," the young man next to him said. "It is not too pricey, especially given the design. Our converters work hard for that." Ning couldn't disagree. Although it was just design, and he found that not necessary, he could understand how that could come to cost so much. But still, he couldn't understand how that went past 175 or 180. 200 was just too much. "That's what the price for such a thing is these days," the man said. "We can't do anything about it." Ning frowned a little. In the end, he shook his head. He couldn't tell them how to run their business. The man returned a moment later with a clearly surprised look on his face and finally looked at Ning, judging him closely. He even wondered if the man had stolen the blade, but that was not something he could say out loud. "May I ask where you acquired this sword?" he asked Ning. Ning looked at the man, judging his expressions before answering truthfully. "I made it myself," he said. He watched the man's expression change from shock to confusion to doubt and back to shock. "You made this?" he asked. "Yes," Ning said. "But," the man looked at Ning. More especially, he looked at his core. He couldn't recognize the essence in the core at all. Was that the next the man would ask him to join them, as the young man had? "This is incredible, young sir," the man said. "Would you like to join us?" "No," Ning said. "I have no plans on joining any shop. Please give me your evaluation of the sword." "It's incredible," the man repeated himself. "There's nothing else I can say about it. Its sharpness is flawless, and its durability is amazing. While there is something to say about the extent of its flexibility, it's still realms beyond what a regular converter could make. You sir are talented if you made this." "That's a product of training," Ning said. "Hundreds of thousands of years of training," but he didn't say that part. The man thought of ways to get Ning to work for them, but Ning spoke before he could say anything else. "So," he asked, "how much will I get for it?" 1,000 earth coins, the man said. "We can negotiate further if you wish to." Ning thought for a bit. Every place had its own conversion rate for its coins, but given that it was a regular location, he guessed that a 1,000 earth coin would be around 300 fire coins. That wasn't so bad when he thought about it. "Sure, I'll take that," he said. It was a pitiful amount for what he already had, but not nothing. The man brought out the coins from his storage ring and placed them in front of Ning to do the transaction. After finishing, the man wanted to ask Ning to stay so that they could talk about some job opportunities, but Ning left before they could stop him. Once he was out, he went on a tour of the city to look through the rest of the things. After an hour or so, he came to understand a bit more about the city. The city of Ulharis was divided into 3 sections. The first area was the core, which was where the governmental buildings were situated, and the Star Beast Institute had its ground. It was a massive area that took over acres and acres of land. The second section was the inner city. It was in a sense the commercial district, with an assortment of shops available there, but people lived there too, mostly the rich ones. The regular people lived in the outer city, the location where Ning was staying in a tavern currently. It was an amalgamation of all sorts of people and places. It was also the place where their food grew and cattle went to graze. None of the sections have physical walls separating them. If any, those would be large circular roads that went around the city. Even that wasn't a good enough distinction, and what you found in one section could be found in the other ones. Ning took his new money and went around buying food and clothes for himself and for the kids. After he bought what he wanted, he went looking for the other 3 shop names that he had heard. To his surprise, he came across another King's Gem before he came across any of the other shops. He wasn't lying when he said they have a monopoly. They have multiple shops in the city. Sure, the city was big, but certainly not that big. Ning walked into that shop for a few minutes to check something. As expected, the prices here were the same as well. He found the remaining shops a while later and went through them all. The prices were all the same here as well. Everything was overpriced, all for the sake of design. That's fine and all, but where are the regular shops, for regular people? He wondered. He found some a while later, on the edge of the inner city, and not a single one had customers like the big shops. The outer building was in shambles, the stairway up to the shop itself broken in parts. The colors were drab and there were no light signs to let anyone know this was a shop. Ning had nearly missed the shop because of that. As for the inside, he decided to check how that was as well. So, he walked up the stairs and went in. Ning walked into the store with only the glow of the weapons and armor giving light to it. The store was narrow, ceilings barely a jump away from his arms when extended upwards, the walls not even 3 meters apart. There was a small bed at the end of the room where a woman lay, half asleep. Her eyes widened a little at the sight of Ning and she got up slowly. "Are you looking for something?" she asked. Ning looked at the old woman who seemed to be in her 50s. "Hi, I was just looking around. I'm sorry if I woke you up," he said. "Looking around? If you're not here to buy anything then leave," she said, getting back on her bed. Ning could only give an awkward smile at that. "All right, I'll buy it," he said. "But I was also hoping you could answer a few questions of mine." He looked around the room as he said that. The weapons and armor that covered the walls dazzled, but none as bright as he hoped to see them. Most were old and unbonded for a long time, losing their essence slowly as the craftsmanship for them was lackluster. The design was normal, maybe even a bit too monotone. Every sword seemed the same, every armor the same pattern. There was no diversity. It was the complete opposite of what he had seen from the other shops. "What do you want to buy?" The woman put on her slippers and walked toward the wall. "Everything will cost you 100 fire coins here." Ning looked at her in surprise. "Everything?" he asked. "The fire sword costs the same as that wind dagger?" "Yes, now choose," the woman said. There was no enthusiasm in her at all. She didn't care much at all. Ning looked somewhat confused. He picked a fire sword and the woman brought it down from the wall. "May I ask why the prices are the same all around?" he asked. "Because I don't care enough to make an effort to know what each one should cost," the woman said. "I don't know much about these things. I only sell them." She waited for Ning to bring out his money to hand over the sword. But Ning delayed it a bit. Instead, he spoke again. "Do you mind telling me how much you earn in this place? How many sales do you get?" The woman frowned a little. "Why do you ask?" she questioned. "Are you buying or not?" "I am, but I would like it if you answered it," he said, reaching into his storage to find the coins. The woman simply shrugged. "I'm lucky if I sell one a month," she said. "Enough for old me when I do." "That's enough for you?" he asked. "You run a business here. How do you go by with barely selling a single one?" "I don't have anything else to do," the woman said, "and I can't exactly leave this place." Ning looked around just as the woman did. He continued looking for a moment before coming to a conclusion. This wasn't a bad place to have. "What would you say if I told you I wanted to buy this shop?" Ning asked. The woman looked back at Ning with a slightly confused look on her face. "Buy this place?" she asked. "Why would you do that?" "I was looking for places to open my own shops, and—" "You're not someone sent by those bastards, are you?" the woman asked. "I told you all already, I'm not selling this place. God, I thought you guys stopped the last time I made it clear. Ning paused for a second before continuing. I believe there's been a mistake. I'm not who you think I am. I only came to the city today for my daughter who is entering the institute, and I was looking for a job while I was here. I just wanted a shop to sell what I make in. The woman was taken aback. I see, she said softly. You shouldn't bother with a shop. They will force you to close it anyway. If you know how to make this thing, go to their workshop. I hear the pay is not bad, and you'll have something to do. No, I went through them, Ning asked. I don't like how they work. Oh, and why is that? I just don't like the way they're doing things, Ning said. He looked at the walls. I don't believe things need to look pretty for them to be usable, and those shops only seem to sell ones that look good. He heard a chuckle and turned around. The woman was smiling this time around, her frown from before vanished. It was a beautiful smile. I don't think you were right, she said, smiling as if reminiscing something. Human beings are greedy, possessive, competitive. They only want what's best for themselves, and that beauty is one of the greatest. I do not believe that just because something has one purpose, its beauty cannot serve another purpose, the woman said. Everything has its own place. Ning looked at her and gave a thoughtful expression. You're right, he said. Maybe I'm being a little hateful on their business strategy for no reason. The woman nodded. That being said, my husband would have absolutely slapped you on the shoulder right now, calling you a kindred spirit like him, she said. He believed exactly what you believe. Your husband? Ning asked. The woman nodded. He's been dead for a decade now, she said. This used to be his shop. We never had any children, so he called this shop his only child. I've been looking after his child since he passed away. Even when the big shops came knocking on our door, giving silent threats to make us stop one way or another, he didn't buckle. After his death, I am now the sole person that keeps it going. His child is my child now. Ning couldn't help but smile. What is this shop's name? He asked. It's named after my husband, she said. It's called Hiran's Love. Ning felt a little conflicted about buying this woman's shop now. He couldn't take away from her what she considered a child. It's a nice name, he said. Although, it would seem that I now have to go look for a place for my shop elsewhere. You wouldn't happen to know where one would be, would you? The woman shook her head. I see, Ning said. Thank you though. Thank you for the sword and the story. Good night. He turned away. As he walked down the steps, he heard the woman call him. Young man. Stop. Ning paused his steps and turned around. Yes? He asked. Did you need something? I didn't forget to pay, right? No, you've paid, the woman said. I wanted to ask something. Sure, ask away, Ning said. Do you want a job? The old woman asked. Ning was taken aback for a second. I'm sorry, a job, the woman asked again, in my shop. I am hoping to open a shop so I don't exactly have to listen to others, Ning said. So I'm not interested in a job. It's less of a job, and I won't be your boss, the woman said. I employ you to take care of my shop. You do everything you want the way you want. You sell what you want. You keep what you earn. I only ask for 150 fire coins a month as rent, and that the name of the shop not be changed at all. How is that? Ning thought for a moment. Can I employ other people too? He asked. Yes, the woman said. Any and all staff will be yours to handle. Ning still rubbed his chin as if considering the proposition. Why me? He asked. The woman shrugged. I'm too old for this, and the shop barely sells anything, but I can't just let go of my husband's dream, and rarely do I find something that has the same philosophy as him. So, I'm taking my chances, she said. Plus you seem to know what you're doing with the weapons, so, do you accept or not? I accept, Ning said. I don't see any point why I shouldn't. Good, the woman said. You can start in the morning. Ning smiled back. I thought I could choose when to start, he asked. The woman smiled again. Cheeky little bastard. Fine, come when you want to during the day. I will have the papers ready to employ you, she said. Don't forget to come. I won't, Ning said. I will come as soon as I can. Having found a shop for himself this early, he left back for his tavern. Everything else, he could find in the coming days. Haddon walked in a field of white, surrounded by hazy faces that walked past him. He looked at the faces and thought he recognized them, but each time he tried to focus on who exactly it was, the face changed. He couldn't remember what the previous face was. This was normal. A cat walked past him, barking as it did so. He moved past and felt the heat from a fire to the side that snuffed when he looked at it. He couldn't remember why it was so cold. He floated, legless, as he hovered through the field. Up front, he saw a set of stairs that he needed to go up the tavern. He stepped on the stairs, one leg at a time, making sure to place all 4 legs on the steps properly. He walked up the mountain cliff, walking past the trees surrounding him. As he went up, he saw someone holding a sword in his hand. He felt scared. The man was going to shoot a bow. Then the ground beneath him vanished as he plunged from the sky, directly into a river below. The cold splash of water woke up Haddon and he realized he truly was in the water. His head filled with confusion and terror before the will to survive took over. He swam upward, trying to surface. He was only used to swimming in rivers, and the river near his village was never this deep. This was terrifying. He came upward and found the water undulating, waves crashing on him before he could even surface. Even when he did surface, he couldn't stay above water for more than a second as another wave pushed him down. The waves seemed to be coming from all directions. His breath was running and he had swallowed some salty water. If this continued, he was going to die. Die. The same as his family. Was he not going to live on? Was he going to die too? Was his destiny to die, drowning somewhere? Something grabbed him from outside, pulling him up. As he left the water, he took a deep, long breath, taking in as much air as he could. When he did, the water in his lungs agitated him and he coughed. He coughed out a mouthful of water before the rest came as spits. As he gasped for breaths, a voice spoke from in front of him. "Tell me all the alphabet." Ning's voice came to Haddon. "What?" Haddon asked before he finally saw Ning in front of him. He held him by his shirt, his legs dangling on top of raging waters that didn't seem to calm. The splashes from below could reach him all the way up here. "Teacher. What are you doing?" he shouted at Ning. "You're trying to kill me." "No," Ning said. "I'm trying to teach you how to read." "No, take me away. I don't want to die," Haddon shouted. "You won't," Ning said, "as long as you tell me the alphabet." The alphabets?" he asked. His mind worked to remember the thing he remembered yesterday. He struggled and finally remembered some of it. He started reciting the alphabet to Ning, but unfortunately, he couldn't remember it all. "Try again," Ning said, and then he let him drop into the ocean once more. Haddon thought he would drown and die on 3 separate occasions when he was tossed into the ocean time and time after not being able to remember the alphabet. He couldn't imagine just why his teacher was trying to kill him. Was he trying to get rid of him? He didn't even question why they were in the ocean. That never even crossed his mind. All he did was desperately try to save himself from the crashing waves that threatened to slam him onto the cliff wall multiple times. He wasn't sure how long he had been in the water or when he was pulled out and placed on the beach. His eyes opened blearily, and his vision was filled by sunlight the moment he opened it. He tried to move both his arms to block the sunlight, but only his right arm listened to his command. He heard footsteps and quickly turned his head toward the figure. "How do you feel?" Ning asked, towering over him, shading him from the sun. I feel like I'm dying," Haddon said. "You tried to kill me." "Nonsense," Ning said and reached for him before pulling him up straight. He dusted the sand off his back and smiled. "So, how was it?" he asked. Haddon looked confused. "How was, what?" he asked. "Your first day of training, of course," Ning said. Haddon looked confused. "You were trying to kill me," he shouted at Ning. Ning took one swipe at his leg, and the boy fell back into the sand. "Don't raise your voice at me," he said seriously. "And I never said your training was ever going to be easy." "Ugh." The boy grunted in pain. He hadn't realized just how much pain his body was in. Just how much the water had hurt him. "Anyway, that is enough for today," Ning said. "We will continue the same tomorrow until you can improve your resistance to pain. I'm hoping to do it in the next few months. Then, you split your core." Ning took the grunting Haddon to a nearby creek on the island he had teleported to and dunked him there a few times until sand hand left every part of his body. Then, he handed him a fresh pair of clothes to change into. "Get changed and wash the old ones, then come find me." Haddon stripped near the flowing creek, the rustle of water bringing him memories of his village. His body aches even as he stands there, the child from the midday breeze bringing pain along with it. His left arm felt numb with pain. Was his life going to be this forever now? To be beaten at every turn, by bandits first, and now his master. He grabbed onto the necklace on his chest. He couldn't use it right now, but he knew this was the storage artifact where his parents' and his brother's ashes were kept. It gave him strength in trying times. He held onto it, searching for that right now. Then, he remembered what he told Ning. "I want to be strong," he said softly. "Strong enough to protect anyone and everyone. Even if it means I have to get beat up every day, I will get strong." He kissed the necklace and let go of it. He changed into fresh new clothes, ignoring the pain his body felt, and went back to where Ning was. "I'm done, teacher," he said seriously. Ning turned around. "Good," he said. "Let's return." Haddon backed away from Ning the moment they appeared inside the room at the tavern. "Whoa, wait, huh? What was that? How are we here?" he asked, surprised. This was his first time being teleported around, or more exactly this was the first time he was conscious while he was teleported from one location to another. "That is teleportation," Ning said. "Get used to it. You'll be doing that a lot many times from today." Haddon looked at Ning as if he was seeing someone else now. He knew his master was strong, but this was something else. "Where were we just now?" he asked, looking outside the tavern. It was morning here, but it had been noon back on that island. "It was an island, east of the Azurage country," Ning said and brought out something from somewhere that Haddon couldn't see. "Eat this." The boy looked at the small ball of powder. "What's this?" he asked. "It's called a pill," Ning explained. "It can heal you very quickly. All the pain in your body would be gone at once." "What?" The boy looked with wonder at the pill in Ning's hand. He took it and ate it, chewing it before swallowing. Ning looked at him eat, knowing what he just gave the boy wasn't a healing pill at all. It was just a placebo, to make the boy he would heal. He had to let the boy sit in pain for a while to get used to it. Ning planned to heal him half a day later so the boy would think the pill worked. The boy showed signs of relief on his face, not knowing what he had eaten. Ning almost wanted to smile. He looked around for a second and then asked the system where Emma was. "Stay here, and learn your alphabet," Ning said. "Emma should be back soon and she will help you with food. I need to go somewhere for now." "Okay, teacher," Haddon said blankly. Ning nodded and turned around to leave. When he was at the door, Haddon called him again. "Teacher," he shouted. Ning turned back around to look at the young boy. "What is it?" he asked. "Thank you for teaching me," he said. "I will not let you down. I will definitely become stronger." Ning smiled at the strong face the boy had put on. Despite all the pain he should be feeling right now, he couldn't help but feel happy about that. "I have no doubts," he said and left with a face full of a bright smile. Ning arrived at Hiran's Love, the shop he was supposed to take over today. The front of the shop looked worse in the day than it did in the night. The gray, colorless wall, the broken bits of wood at the front, and the steps that seemed hazardous to even climb up to the shop. Everything told people just one thing. "Don't come," he sighed. He would have to do renovation very soon and a lot of it. "You came." The woman shouted from the dark inside of the room. The store faced west, so it would remain in the darkness for the majority of the day. Ning walked in and looked around. It truly was worse in a day than it was at night. He sighed internally and showed none of his thoughts outside. "Greetings, boss," he said as he walked up to her next to the bed. The woman lifted the wide of the sheets and brought out some paper. "Here, I had Juna prepare the legal papers," the woman said. "Sit and read." Ning nodded and sat on the bed, the wood creaking as he did so. How many years had this thing been in here? He looked through the pages and was surprised to see just how legitimate the paper was. "Does this Juna fellow work in the government or something?" Ning asked. "Oh yes, she's illegal. I forget the word. She works in the court to bring justice to the men who have been wronged. She's the daughter of the couple next door." "The general store?" Ning asked. He had seen it coming in. The store was in a much better state than this store. "I see. I will read this then." It didn't take him long to get through the pages of text. In fact, he didn't even bother reading it at all and simply asked the system to do it for him and tell him the appropriate actions that needed to be taken if necessary. From what the system told him, there weren't any sort of underhanded actions being taken through the words. Everything was written clearly. Ning would own the shop, and unless he was going to make physical changes to the shop that cost over 1,000 fire coins, he would not need to let the woman know about any of what he wanted. The shop's name would remain Hiren's Love, and every time a sale of the items in the shop that had been made by Hiren, her husband, was made, she would receive 75% of that earnings. Lastly, Ning had to pay 150 fire coins each month as rent. Other than that, he had every freedom to do anything else. He took a pen that was off to the side and signed it. "Thank you, Miss Layla," he said, handing back the signed contract. The woman took it and looked through it. Nothing seemed off, but what would she know? "I will let Juna look through it once she comes from her job. Do you want to start today, or will you start tomorrow?" "I will." Ning looked around. "I want to start today, but I don't know if I can. I have to go look for a place to stay. Can't stay in the tavern forever." "You're staying in a tavern?" the woman asked with a surprised look. "Yes," Ning said. "We just came to the city yesterday, and I decided to settle down here for a while." Right. Your sister is joining the institute," the woman said. "My daughter," Ning corrected her. "And yes, that's why I'm doing this." "Daughter, You don't look that old yourself," the woman said. "Yeah, but I am," Ning said. "Anyway, I'll try to look around for a place to stay today. I'll come tomorrow around this time and open the shop." "How many people are you?" the old woman asked. "Just you and your daughter?" "No, it's me, my daughter, a young boy we saved from bandits, a beast, and her 2 children," Ning said. "That's a lot," the woman said. "But I can fix you a place. My place is mostly empty, so if you guys promise to not be much trouble, I will let you stay here." "Here?" Ning asked. "My house is above the shop," the woman said. "If you want to live there, I will let you." Will it fit us all?" Ning asked. "It's large, don't worry," the woman said. "You can come check. I'll have to make up another contract if you decide to stay." She pushed on the wall at the corner of the room that was clad in shadows. A door opened, leading to another room. Ning arrived there and was surprised to see wooden crates, some filled, some empty, most glowing from the inside in the darkness. "More artifacts?" he asked. "My husband liked making them a lot," she said. "He left me quite a few to sell." She continued walking through the dark room and arrived outside a door to a backyard. To Ning's surprise, the backyard was huge, beyond his imagination. How is this place so large?" he asked. It had to extend for at least 100 meters on each side. "This is a collective courtyard," the woman explained. "It's not my background as much as it is everyone else's. We didn't want to live surrounded by our small backyard, so we decided to let it be free. So the children can play when they want in safety, or people could work when they wanted to. My husband worked right here all day long, while I watched the shop for him." She pointed at a spot on the ground that was now covered with grass that hadn't been cut in a while. Not a single person was back there. "Everyone is so busy with their life now," the woman shook her head. She walked up a wooden set of stairs, going to the 2nd floor of the building. "Here's my place," she said, going in herself. "Come on and check. See if it fits you." Ning checked the place that was available in the woman's house for him to stay. It wasn't a very large place, only as wide as the tavern they were staying at. But that was good enough for him. It wasn't like he needed a place. It was just Haddon who needed a place to stay in. He agreed to pay the woman 50 fire coins to allow them to stay here, and they would have to buy the ingredients for a meal each night, which the woman would make for them and herself. Ning found that a fine deal. Since he found a place to stay, he had nothing to worry about at all. So, he started working on the renovations. He could do it instantly with his system, saving himself time, but he had nothing if not time, so he bought the materials himself and started working on it. All he did for today was make some cement and plaster the places on and around the shop that had holes in them. That was the first step. Once he was done, he placed some warning signs around the shop and left to go heal Haddon. Haddon was fast asleep when he arrived in the tavern. Emma was next to him, reading the book that Ning had created for her. "What are you doing?" Ning asked. She showed her empty finger. "Reading," she said, trying to understand the language of this world. Ning nodded. "Is it easy?" he asked. "Pretty easy," she said. I would have probably taken a month or two to understand it and speak it even if I started from nothing. Ning didn't doubt it. As a will, who was one of the strongest cultivators and mage in the universe, she was talented at a level that shouldn't exist in the normal world. Not to mention, she had been born of a Ning that held bloodlines that would be the strongest as well. In essence, Emma was someone who could only have been born out of a host of the energy system. Did he eat? Ning asked, moving close to Haddon and healing him with a simple touch. The wounds around his body disappeared and his breathing turned less haggard too. Yes, and I ate as well. Where were you? She asked. Did I not tell you? He asked. I got a new shop. Emma's eyes narrowed. When did you get a shop? She asked. Yesterday, after you two went to sleep, Ning said. Not that you would know about that. Yeah, you never told me. I have no idea where you disappeared to, Emma said. I signed the contract today and I found ourselves a place to stay, Ning said. We move out tomorrow morning. Is it a good place? Emma asked. It won't matter to you since you'll be staying in the institute anyway, Ning said. Emma thought for a bit and shrugged. Have you eaten anything? She asked. No, Ning said. I don't really need to. Good, Emma said, standing up and dropping the book to the ground. Let's go eat. Ning had no say in her decision. He shrugged and walked out with her daughter to go eat. Emma brought Lori and Lyra from the repository but not Umbra. Why did you leave their mother behind? He asked. Because I'm afraid they won't let her into the arena, Emma said. We would have to leave her outside. Ning thought. Arena? What's that? Emma turned to look at him. You don't know about the arena? Didn't you say you went out last night? I did, Ning said. I didn't tour a whole lot. I was looking mostly for the weapons shop. Well, there is an arena on the other side of the inner city, and there are duels there that happen every day, she said. Ning looked at her with a suspicious look on his face. And you want to enter this duel? You're too strong for this, you know? He asked. Did you never enter a duel when you were strong? Emma asked him. Ning couldn't answer. He scratched his head, remembering the time back in Nulren when he fought in duels despite his strength. He would be a hypocrite to stop her from entering. I'm not dueling, Emma answered. I'm letting Lori fight. Why Lori? Ning asked. Because he'll need to have something to do to pass his time while he's here with you. Take him to duels when you can. Let him have some fun, Emma said. Ning looked at her with narrowed eyes. You decided to take Lyra to the institute? He asked. Emma nodded. I discussed it with Umbra and she said it's better if I take Lyra with me. She's too shy on her own and needs to learn to deal with the environment on her own. Tough love, I suppose. Ning didn't argue. This was probably for the best. I'm sad the twins will be separated for a while, Ning said. Just for a decade, I believe, Emma said. I can't believe you have to go to a school for 10 years. What sort of school do you have to go to for 10 years? We had 12 years of school back on Earth when I hadn't died, Ning said. No wait, I stopped after 12 years. There was actually more after that. Like many more years more. Wow, you must have been glad to not have to go through it all, Emma said. Ning grimaced a little. I had to stop school to work and feed myself, he said. I was 18 and couldn't stay in the orphanage anymore. If I had some sort of scholarship, I would have probably taken it. But then your future wouldn't have been so bad, Emma said, and you wouldn't have received the energy system. Yeah, pretty much, Ning said. I was lucky to have been unlucky then. They went to a restaurant close by and ate themselves full before making their way to the arena that was on the other side of the city. Ning looked at the arena in front of him that was actually dug out to make space, instead of built on top of the ground. Ning was surprised to see such a sight and could only imagine how much work must have gone into digging out this much land. And he couldn't help but wonder what they did with all the things that they took out from under here. The arena was nearly 300 meters wide and had around 50 meters of total vertical depth, although slanted down through 100 meters of horizontal distance to reach the bottom. Aside from a simple yellow wall surrounding where the arena was, everything else was built in the hole they had dug. Ning had expected a drab nature to this place from the outside, but once entering, he could see just how extravagant it was. Shooting geysers, water flowing from all sides of the arena, and massive screens of light in the sky, run solely using formations. He could hear cheers from all around, the sounds of the crowd barely broken through by the sounds of the fights in the arena. From where Ning stood, he could see everything. Every person fighting. Every man, woman, and child cheering for something. He could also see beasts in the distance, fighting amongst themselves, a lion trying to leap for a vulture that flew around, sending down fire. At a single glance, it was chaos. His eyes flashed to the side, seeing a small indentation on the hole where rooms were created. One of the rooms had people standing out, and from the sound he heard, he could tell that it was a betting house. And there weren't just one, but many. All around the place, there were multiple betting houses etched into the walls that were the ground. Ning walked down the flight of stairs with Emma, looking for a spot to sit in. They didn't have to pay to enter here, so he didn't have a seat dedicated to him either. A waft of food smells drifted from the side as Ning saw someone selling fried potatoes. He had just eaten, but he still wanted some. "What are you doing?" Emma asked, watching him walk away. "Look for a place to sit. I'll get us some snacks," Ning said. "But Emma sighed, seeing that her father had no intention of stopping. She turned around and looked for an empty spot for two. Once she found one, she walked down the steps until she came close. As she came down, she realized that the lower levels were not filled as much as the ones above. She looked back toward the upper half of the arena and understood that people liked to see everything from far away. They had good vision thanks to the physical improvement realm, so it didn't matter to them that they were far away. They could see very well. She sat on the seat she found on the higher end of the lower half of the seating arena. She placed Lori right next to her and had him save the seat for her father. She watched the battles that were happening on the stages down below. Although they were considered stages, it was in fact a single large slab of some sort of white stone that was divided via barriers and arrays, separated into 4 groups. From what Emma had heard, and could now see, the stage that was closer to her on the left was where humans fought each other, one duel at a time. The one to its right on her end was the same as well, humans fighting one another. Except, she realized that the ones fighting there were just kids, barely at the age of 20, while the first one didn't seem to have the restriction. Adjacent to the stage of the left, on the other side, was a place where 2 beasts fought each other. The stage was currently empty, but it was where she had seen the lion and vulture fighting each other earlier as she walked down. Then, adjacent to that stage, and the ones where the teens fought, there was a man fighting a large boar who shot water from its snout. Her eyes moved up to the sky where she could see the same fight but enlarged for a larger screen so everyone could watch it without any sort of obstacle. She wondered how it was made. Her father told her there were things like arrays, but he had never told her how it worked. She was curious about that. "Watch carefully, Lori," Emma said softly. "This is where you will be fighting in a few days." "Me?" Lori asked. "Yes, you," Emma said. "See that? Look. That snake is going to fight that octopus soon. You will have to fight just like that too." "Fight?" Lori shouted. "I fight." "Yes, you fight," she said, watching the new fight unfold. The snake was a light essence snake. Its name unknown to her. The octopus was the same, and instead of being a water essence beast as she would have assumed it to be, it was instead a fire essence beast. The battle commenced and the snake slithered forward, looping around the octopus, looking for an opportunity to strike. However, the 8 tentacles of the octopus made it hard for the snake to find an opening. The octopus started the attacks, hitting the snake on its body, but the snake's body arched upward, letting the octopus's tentacle move beneath it. The snake then straightened its body in a snap, striking the octopus's arm with its body, and started wrapping around the octopus. Emma watched with an intrigued look on her face, but there was some disappointment too. She hadn't realized that neither of the beasts was in the essence manifestation realm at all. They were going to be useless when it came to using essence too. The snake suddenly opened its mouth, revealing 2 fangs that glowed bright yellow. And through its fangs, it shot the first and last essence attack of the match, winning it easily. "Whoa!" Emma cried out, nearly getting out of her seat to clap. That had been an incredibly short but entertaining duel in her opinion. "That was amazing, right?" she asked Lori. "Amazing," Lori answered, repeating her words. Emma nodded. "Wow. I thought it was going to drag on forever and then the snake I did not see that coming at all," she said. "Is this your first time watching beasts fight or what?" A voice called to her from behind. Emma turned around and met the sapphire blue eyes of a girl with curly brown hair and some freckles on her face. She was a little chubby, but nowhere near fat, and from what Emma could see, she was right around 14 or 15 years old. I've seen beasts fight before, Emma said. Come on, the girl said. No one who has seen beasts fight would be this excited about a single battle between a fire-stamped octopure and a bright lord snake. One would know that the snake was going to win from the start. Emma looked at the girl with not a very favorable expression. I've seen a lot of beasts fight in my life, she answered. Just not in this place. These beasts specifically I have never seen fight. Ah, the girl nodded. Understandable. My bad. I've been studying beasts for 2 years now and I forget not all know about them. No, they don't, Emma said. Now that she was looking at the girl carefully, she was holding a pen and notebook to herself, that blended in the blue and white pattern of her dress. You like beasts? Emma asked. Yes, but I'm not a fanatic if that is what you mean, the girl said. I'm just studying so I can be accepted into the Star Beast Institute. Emma looked at the girl, her mind thinking of a million things until she came to a conclusion a fraction of a second later. You need to know about the beasts to enter the Star Beast Institute? She asked. Dear, the girl said. It's an institute with the words beast in it. What do you think? Emma thought to herself. Good to know. Thank you. I was planning on learning more about the entrance exam tomorrow, but this helps. The girl looked at Emma with a suspicious look on her face. You want to enter the Star Beast Institute? She asked. Yes, Emma said. That is why I came here to this city in the first place, to take part in the institute. I can't believe they didn't tell us we would need knowledge of beasts to enter. They don't announce it, but if you go read up what they teach and what the previous entrance tests have been, it becomes pretty evident that it is necessary, the girl said. I see, Emma said. Thank you for telling me. She extended her arm with a smile. My name is Emma. May I ask what your name is? The girl looked at her for a few seconds before shaking her hand. Betty, she said. Word of advice, Emma. Give up. Go for next year. I'm not quitting, Emma said. You didn't even know that a bright lord snake had a natural light conduit in the form of its fangs and was surprised by the attack. This sort of knowledge is considered basic, even among just the entrants. I'm telling this for your own good, the girl said. They consider anyone who fails in previous year's tests to not be worth it and deduct your mark from the start. I can tell that you are not ready for this test and will most likely have to take it next year. So you need to. Emma gestured for the girl to stop talking. Thank you, Betty, but I'm good. If I fail, I'll just go to another school. There are hundreds on this continent. Besides, I won't fail. I can promise you that. Betty looked at Emma for a bit, her temper rising slowly at the fact that Emma didn't believe her. In the end, she could only let that temper go with a sigh as she closed her notebook and stood. You seem determined, so I won't stop you, she said. Good luck, you'll need it. Okay, Emma said and watched the girl leave. See you at the institute, Betty. The girl stopped one last time to look back at Emma, then shook her head and walked up the stairs, leaving the arena. Emma turned back and sat on her seat. Okay? Lori asked. I'm okay, Emma said. That was a rude girl, wasn't she? Lori looked puzzled as to what she meant but nodded his head nonetheless to agree with her. That doesn't matter though, I guess, Emma said. She does have a good heart in there anyway. She helped me in the end. Who did? Ning asked. Just a girl, Emma answered. What took you so? Her words paused in her mouth when she saw her father. Ning stood there, holding 3 boxes of fries, some strips of chicken, a sandwich of some sort, and some drinks provided in steel cups, meant to be handed back. What are you doing? Emma asked, shocked to see her father with so much food. We just ate. I know, Ning said. But I couldn't stop myself after seeing such good food. I wanted to try what they had. Still, this is too much, Emma said. No, it's not, Ning said as he fed a potato chip to Lori. It's barely any if you ask me. The two of us can chow this food down in no time. And your body constitution won't let you get bloated either. Emma sighed. I suppose, she said, grabbing a box of chips herself and eating one before feeding another to Lori. Still, you were quite late. Oh, that's because I went to bet on the matches for the next hour, Ning said. I bet it all on the underdogs, so if even one of them wins, we'll hit it big. Ning felt as if his heart had been ripped out of his chest by pliers watching the unfortunate event fold out in front of him. What had he done to deserve this? What had he done to have this tragedy befall him? This was not what he wanted to have happened from the decision he had made. The outcome was supposed to be a good one, and yet, why had life treated him this badly? He could feel the tears threatening to leave his eyes, and today he wanted to let it flow. He wanted to let such incredible sadness flow out of him, let it devour the others who saw it as well. Emma saw him in pain, saw him holding back the tears, and could only sigh in disbelief. "It's just a bunch of money. So what if you lost the bets?" she asked him. Not a single one of the bets Ning had made on the upcoming matches panned out at all. He lost every single one of them. "Maybe next time, don't bet everything on underdogs," Emma said. "There's a reason why they were called the underdogs, you know. It's because everyone recognized they were the inferior in the matchups." Ning's head drooped still. Emma took the lead, dragging him out of the arena. It was about time for the sun to start setting, so they went back. There weren't many more interesting fights until later that night, and they didn't feel like staying until then. "Where's our new home? I was hoping to see," Emma said. "It's on the northern side of the town. Will take us half an hour more to get back to the tavern if we decide to go that route," Ning said. "Oh." Emma placed her hands on her chin. "We can go tomorrow morning then." "After I'm done with Haddon," Ning said. "Don't torture the young man so much," Emma said, rubbing Laurie's back. Laurie purred at the light scratches. "I'm just giving him what he needs," Ning said while planning internally on how to torture the kid tomorrow so that he becomes more resistant to pain. "Oh right." Emma remembered her talk with the girl. "I need some books. Make me some." "What sort?" Ning asked. "Everything about the beasts of this world," Emma said. "Apparently that is what is required to get into this school. I plan on learning that tonight. I might have to go learn what else we need before the exam." Ning nodded and spoke to his system. 3 seconds later, books appeared in front of him, which he was surprised to see the sizes of. "I'm so used to just getting all the information into my head directly," he said, flipping through the pages. The colorful images of the beasts were impressive, and the text was clear. And weirdly enough, he could smell that one smell that only came with new books. A book on beasts' names, another on their descriptions and habitats, and finally one on the history of how beasts are dealt with in Astoria. "That should be enough, right?" he asked his daughter. Emma placed Laurie on her father's shoulders and took the book, looking through them. "Ooh, there's a lot to learn it seems," she said. "Yeah, this should be enough for now, thanks, Papa." Ning smiled and took Laurie into his embrace. "Let's return." Once they returned, Emma started studying her books and Ning forced Haddon to study a few hours before going to sleep. Then, after 6 hours, it was time to bring madness to Haddon's life before morning hit. He dropped the poor guy into the ocean just as the last time, at the same place as last time as well. However, this time Haddon was prepared. He was caught off guard the first time around, but he wasn't going to let that happen this time around at all. The first moment he was pulled out, he laid out all the alphabets one by one. Ning smiled at the answer, and Haddon even thought he could see a hint of pride on his teacher's face and was expecting praise the next time he spoke. However, instead of praise, he got only a single question. "Tell me the alphabet backwards now." Haddon was stunned for the briefest second before realizing what was being asked of him. "What?" he asked unintentionally as a shout. "Backwards? It's..." It was clear he couldn't say it in time, and even as he mumbled various letters, his inability to follow what he was told to do was apparent. And Ning didn't let that go. He did let go of something else. Haddon. Haddon fell into the ocean, the waves crashing on him once again. 3 hours later, he was bruised to his private region, which he could see while he stood naked next to the river, getting ready to change. The pain all over his body was incredible, but he didn't let that make him cry today. He wouldn't. He had to become stronger, or else, he cried once again, remembering his family. This one was okay. He wasn't crying because of the physical pain. He went back to Ning after getting dressed and they teleported back to the tavern where Emma was still reading up on the books Ning had given her yesterday. You hurt him more today than yesterday," she said, standing up to look over the young man. Haddon felt his face hit up as Emma moved his face side to side, but there was no way for anyone to tell that with his current physical condition. "Don't worry, he will be healed in a few hours," Ning said, giving Haddon the pill that would heal him. Emma was duped as well since Ning put on an illusion around Haddon that made everyone else see him as healed. "All right. Let's go out to get something to eat, he said with a loud clap to gather their attention. After that, I will take the both of you to our new place. Miss Layla. Good morning. Ning arrived at Hiran's Love an hour later when the sun had already risen high in the sky, with the two kids following next to him and a large beast behind him. He looked at the plasterwork he had done yesterday and how it had all solidified already. Today he would work on the paint. The woman was busy with a knife, cutting something on a large bucket in the shop when they arrived. She looked at them as they came in. "Ah, these must be the kids you talked about," she said and walked up to them. She smelled of fresh herbs and leaves, which Ning saw from his vantage point was what she had been cutting up. "Welcome, you two," she said and looked at Emma. "You must be Ning's daughter." "Hello, madam. I am Emma." Emma gave a respectful greeting, bowing a little in respect. "Oh my, look at you. How beautiful," Layla said, moving up to hold Emma's arms. "How old are you?" "I was expecting someone younger when Ning said he had a daughter." 15, Emma said. That was the number she could go around saying without ever being questioned for it. 15. The woman looked surprised and turned to Ning. "How young were you when you had her?" "Don't let my father's looks deceive you. He is older than he looks," Emma said. "Much older." "Is that so?" the woman said. Ning had told her that before, but she hadn't truly given it much thought. "And who is this?" Haddon was a little nervous. He gulped a little, his body still in a bit of pain, and introduced himself. "I'm Haddon. Nice to meet you, miss." "Nice to meet you," the woman said. "And who are you to Ning?" "I'm his student," Haddon replied. "Student, huh?" the woman said with a bit of a smile on her face. "Make sure to learn what you can from him then." It was then that the woman's eyes fell toward the shadows and she saw something she hadn't immediately noticed. A beast. Umbra sat in the shade with her two children next to her, waiting until Ning had some orders for her. She would stay there until he said something. "What is that?" the woman asked, a bit of fear budding in her heart. Oh, that is Umbra, our beast," Ning explained. "I told you last time that we had a beast too, didn't I? I thought you said they were small," the woman said. "Ah, her kids are small and she isn't that big when you compare her to the beasts out there," Ning said and turned toward Umbra. "Umbra, can you come in here?" Umbra finally walked in. Lori and Lyra walked in next to her, and Lori jumped onto Emma's shoulders before giving a high-pitched growl as a greeting. He sounded no different than a young cat. The woman was surprised and even a bit taken aback. She looked toward Umbra. The completely black beast gave her some sense of fear. However, she didn't let it be shown. "You have tamed it?" the woman asked. Ning said. "Umbra, say hello." "Greetings," Umbra said, her voice a deep growl. She spoke in a language that a human would understand. The woman was truly frightened this time around. She stepped back in shock, looking at the beast, pointing to it in shock. It just spoke. "She just spoke," Ning said again. "Umbra here is a mother and is very friendly. You do not have to worry about her." "Oh okay," the woman said, not sure what else to say. She didn't even know how else she was supposed to react. She had a hard time trusting Ning on the matter, but she didn't have the heart to tell an intelligent beast to go away. What if it came back to eat her? "Where do you plan on keeping her?" she asked. "I'll make her a small shelter in the back. I'm hoping that won't be much of a problem," he said. "She can stay in the room behind here if only a corner is enough for her," the woman said. "Ah, right, that will work too," Ning said. "I won't have to make her anything then," he said. "Thank you, Miss Layla." "Thank you." Umbra spoke as well and beckoned her children to do the same. They could only purr and bow. The woman sighed. "All right, come on in. Do you have any furniture?" she asked. "None," Ning said. "But we don't need it. Everything we need we have in our storage artifacts. You don't have to worry about it." The woman nodded and started walking. "Stay here and call me if someone comes by," Ning told Umbra and walked away after grabbing Lyra. Emma took Lori, and Haddon followed them quickly, going to the floor above to see their new place of stay. They saw the backyard first and then the room above. The room was quite shabby, but it was better than having nothing. "You two boys will let that room," the woman said, showing an empty room to the left of the hallway. "This one on the right is the kitchen. And that at the front is where I sleep. Your daughter can live there until she passes the institute exam and has to go there. When is that, by the way? 5 days later, Emma said. Oh, it is close then, the woman said. She reached for something and it out. A piece of paper with text on it. This is the contract for you staying here. Read it and sign it, she said and handed it over to Ning. Ning gave it a quick glance and signed it without much thought before handing it back. The woman saw it and nodded. Well then, welcome to your new home. I hope you will like it. Ning smiled. Thank you for letting us stay, Miss Layla.